Well, good morning, New Life. I want to welcome, I know some of you, it's your first time here. I know some of you are new here. Just wanted to say welcome, and hopefully, we're honored and excited that you are here, and hopefully God speaks to you. Hope you feel loved and welcome, and we had such a wonderful time of worship and praise, and then Chris helped us to focus on what the essence is of our faith. It's Jesus, His love for us, and His sacrifice, the way that He opened the door into heaven for each and every one of us. And what we do when we take communion is we focus on His sacrifice, which reminds us of His incredible love for us. And so, it's a special time when everybody here, I don't know where you are in your life, in your faith, in your walk with God. I know some of you where you are, but some of you I don't. But like I said, I really hope that God uses this time to speak to you, to help you feel that you're loved, you're wanted, and you're welcomed. We are going to be in 2 Chronicles chapter 28 today. We are continuing the series that we started last week. We called Lessons from a Throne, in which we'll be looking at different kings and queens and all the events surrounding them, the kings and queens in Israel, and trying to see maybe God is trying to teach us something through those people, through the way that they acted, through the priorities and their examples and the choices that they made. So this is what we're going to be doing, and that's where we're going to start today. But before we get to that passage, have you ever been in a situation where when you just kind of gave up hope, when you thought it was over? You just didn't see how it could reverse and something good could come out of it. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have been in situations like that. Just kind of wanted to share my personal story. If I couldn't, as I was preparing, I couldn't remember if I shared the story with you. But even if I did, even if you hear it the second time or third time, just pretend that it's the first time hearing it. And so, anyway, we were still in Kazakhstan. It's wintertime. I get up in the morning and I go to brush my teeth and everything, and I open the faucet and I see the water pressure is real low. And everything inside of me just gets cold. It's like, I think I know what's happening. So I get outside and there's a water pipe. There's a spot on the ground. It was wintertime, okay, below freezing. So, and I see the ground is kind of wet and it's steaming. And I'm like, okay, we have a water leak. So I go to work. I said, guys, I can't be here today. I'm taking a day off. And so I get back, and to be honest, I don't really know what to do. I'm thinking I need to find the leak. And so I start digging. It's a paved road, so I don't want to mess a lot of it up. And it's cold, it's freezing, and you get, the deeper I get, there's boulders like kind of similar to what we have on the wall over there. You just have to get through those and kind of continue digging. It's not like dirt, it's not sand or anything. It's rocky. It took a whole day, and I was just losing hope. I'm telling you, I need to find where the pipe is first, and then after I find the pipe, how do you know where the leak is? There's really what are the chances that you're going to get to a place? I'm like, I think it's going to be in the area, but, it could be anywhere. The water could flow out and, come out of this spot, but the leak could be there. Anyway, took a lot, the whole day, and it's getting dark, and my friends came over. They are helping, and I'm like, by that point, it's getting cold and dark and really wet, and I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're going to find that leak. But even if we find, I'm not sure we're going to be able to fix it. So I do what every godly person does. I start whining and grumbling. And I'm thinking, I hate this house. I hate my life. We'll never fix this. There's so much faith. Have you ever looked at the situation and thought, well, there's no chance this can be fixed? It's far beyond repair. It's so bad that it's not even worth the effort. And it's one thing when it's your house. It's a totally different thing when it's something in your life. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a season in your life. Maybe it's a prayer that you just feel is unanswered. And I'm sure we all have areas or have had areas in our lives where they just feel kind of stuck. They feel broken. They feel hopeless. So maybe instead of a house problem or house issue in your house, maybe it's a marriage situation. Maybe you've been waiting and waiting and kind of losing hope. Losing hope that it will work out, that it will ever get better. You're praying, you're trying, you do what you wanted, what you know to do, but it's just not working. And you're month after month, year after year, you start losing hope. Maybe it's not a house issue for you, but it's a prodigal child. And you're praying, they're walked away from faith, they walked away from God. You're watching them kind of like in the slow motion, them wrecking their life. And you've been praying, you've tried to talk, you do everything you could think of. And you eventually, gradually start losing hope. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe you're just trying to get friends, but everybody else already has friends. And they don't have room for you. You don't feel welcome. And so what do? Besides going playing pickleball. There are a lot of friends there. Come to New Life. You'll find friends here. But seriously, you may be in a place where you're like, I don't know if I'll ever have real friends in my life. Or are you looking at a problem that it's beyond fixing and you're just like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is ever going to be fixed. And if we're completely honest, in those situations, we don't just question the outcomes and the results. We start questioning God. Because when something feels hopeless, where do we go to immediately? We go to God. God, I'm begging you, please fix this situation. And so if things still don't work out, if things don't get fixed, if problems don't get resolved, we start questioning God. Is He even listening? Does He even care? Did He forget about me? Maybe. So we come to a place where when we cannot see God working, it's so easy to assume that He is not working. And that's exactly what it felt like and maybe looked like to God-fearing, godly, and righteous people during the reign of Ahaz. Last time we talked about Hezekiah, the king of Judah. Ahaz was an evil king. And being a righteous person during his reign maybe felt like everything was completely hopeless. Because everywhere you looked, evil prevailed. Godlessness is all over the place. So this is where we get to the 2 Chronicles 28, and we'll read verses 3 through 6 and then verse 8. We could read the whole thing. I didn't want to take a lot of time, but as we read, try to place yourself in that situation, in that time. Just being a God-honoring, righteous person living in those days. And we read portions of it last week, but again, not everybody was here last week, so we'll just go over this again. He offered sacrifices, he being Ahaz, the king of Judah. He becomes a king, and so that's what he starts doing. He offered sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom, even sacrificing his own sons in the fire. You're living in in a country that's supposed to reflect the glory of God to the surrounding nations. And then you get a king who starts worshiping false gods to the point of sacrificing in the fire his own children, setting an example, and that's what many other people did. You're thinking, what is the world coming to? So, sacrificing his own sons in the fire. In this way, he followed the detestable practices of the pagan nations the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the pagan shrines and on the hills and under every green tree. Because of all this, the Lord his God allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz. So God is watching this and he's like, it's time for you to experience the consequences. The problem with somebody just walking away from God and starting to wreck their life, that not only their life gets wrecked, other people around them usually feel the consequences. And in this case, if the king does that, the whole country feels the consequences. And so this is what happens. God says, okay, I will allow you to be invaded. I will allow you to be defeated by other armies and other kingdoms. So God allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz and to exile large numbers of his people to Damascus. So they're taken to Syria. They're taken captive, and they're taken to Syria. The armies of the king of Israel also defeated Ahaz and inflicted many casualties to his army, on his army. In a single day, Pekah, son of Remaliah, Israel's king, killed 120,000 of Judah's troops. All of them experienced warriors because they had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. And then verse 8 says, the armies of Israel captured 200,000 women and children from Judah and seized tremendous amounts of plunder, which they took back to Samaria. So the country is just falling into pieces. It's not just the worship of false gods that's going on, not just the sacrifice of children. Thousands of people are killed. Thousands of people get taken into exile. And so it's a chaos. And another passage, the next passage is verse 24 in the same chapter. The king took the various articles from the temple of God and broke them into pieces. So he's the king of the country. He's obviously just walking away from God. God is allowing him to feel the consequences of his just disbelief and godless living. And so instead of repenting, because there's always an option to repent and come back to God and ask him to help him and forgive you and to restore you, instead of doing that, he gets mad at God and he's like, okay, I'm not following God, I'm not worshiping God, and then nobody else will. So he took the various articles from the temple of God and broke them into pieces. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple so that no one could worship there. And he set up the altars to the pagan gods in every corner of Jerusalem. Earlier in the same chapter, he used the gold and silver and precious things from the temple to pay the king of Assyria that he tried to hire to help be an ally in, to defend, go against the other armies that were attacking their country. And so the king of Assyria comes, gets the money and leaves. Doesn't do anything. So, and then he's just like, okay, I'll just shut the whole thing down. I'll shut the temple down so that no one could worship God. We're just seeing the spiritual collapse of a country, like I said, the country that was purposed, that was created by God. The whole purpose of God, blessing this country was that they would reflect, they would be the example that would just shine to the surrounding nations, so that they would see what their country could be, what their lives could be if they would worship the one and true God. And this country just collapses and everything falls into pieces. And it lasted 16 years. I mean, I know for us, it's just we read it and it's just a few verses that we read in a few seconds, maybe a minute. To the people that lived there, it lasted 16 years. I know it's not 100 years, but it's still a long time. It's 16 years. So imagine being a righteous person, a God-fearing person living in a time like that. The main place of worship, which is the temple, is shut down. The priests are kicked out, fired, sent away. The total madness is happening around. People, everywhere you look, people bow down to idols and burn their children in the fire. So you're thinking, probably, what I was thinking, trying to find that league, there's really no hope in sight. It's only getting worse. Year after year after year. So you're looking at being a godly person, you're looking at the circumstances, and you don't see how. Just you look at everything, you're analyzing everything. You don't see how things could change. And so your conclusion that you come to, being a person in that situation, is that God must have given up on us. God must have just turned his back and forgot about us because he's not doing anything. And not only on us, God must have forgotten about me. Because this is when it hurts the most. Because I can look at the general situation and feel okay, but when it's me, when it's my life, when it's my situation, when it's my loss of hope, it feels different. So God must have forgotten about me. But then, out of nowhere, a new king comes. And this king's name is Hezekiah. And he's the son of Ahaz, the son of this evil king, one of the most evil kings that the country, the tribe of Judah has ever seen. And he comes and this is what we talked about last time, he initiates a spiritual revival and reverses things completely in the first month of his rule. The very first month, he becomes a king and he says, okay, enough of this. We're going in a completely different direction. He gathers the priests. He commissions them to sanctify themselves, to sanctify the temple, to reopen the temple, and to resume and restore the worship at the temple. Worship is restored. Sacrifices to God are resumed. And the idol worship places are destroyed. So what seemed to be dead and hopeless to the people who were still faithful to God is alive again. So what happened? Did God change all of a sudden? He forgot about people and then now he remembered? Maybe his character changed. Maybe he remembered, oh, I actually love these people. Let me do something for them. You see, there's an important thing for all of us to keep in mind when we are losing hope, when we're going through some tough situations in our lives. Just because we do not see God working doesn't mean that he's not. Just because we do not see it, it doesn't mean that he's not working. And you know, all these reforms that Hezekiah started, I wanted to read one verse in chapter 29, verse 36. It's kind of like a summary. After the temple was reopened and the services at the temple, the worship service was restored, it says, and Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had done for the people, for everything had been accomplished so quickly. I mean, you see the people celebrating and realizing it was God who did this. They were not saying, oh, Hezekiah is such a cool guy. They realized, including Hezekiah realized, that it was the work of God who did this. And we can know that they obviously didn't expect it. It didn't seem possible, such a sharp and quick reversal. But when God moves, He moves. When God decides to do something, He does it. And you may look at this verse and think, well, it's good for them because God did things very quickly. It says in the verse, everything had been accomplished so quickly. But we need to remember that sometimes God moves quickly. Sometimes God may move slowly. And sometimes He works in ways that we do not fully understand or see. But just because we do not see Him working, it does not mean that He's not working. Just because you do not see God working in your situation, it does not mean that He's not working behind the scenes. So my question to you today is, what have you given up on? Where did you lose hope? Where do you think it's over? Where do you not think things cannot change? And this is why it matters. This is why it's important. I know it's like, okay, theologically, it's easy for me to say, or tell it to somebody else. Hey, just because you do not see God working, how He works, just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean He's not. It's totally different, again, like I repeat myself, but it's totally different when it's me in that situation, when it's a year after year after year and things are not changing. So why is it important to remember this truth, that just because I do not see doesn't mean that God is not doing anything? It's important to remind ourselves of this because there's something dangerous that happens when we lose hope. When we lose hope, we stop praying. When we lose hope, we distance ourselves from God. Because why get close to God who is not showing and expressing His love for me? Why just be close and pray to God who is just seemingly kind of turning His back on me? Why get close to God who doesn't seem to care about me? So what we do, what kind of seems natural to us and logical to us, we stop praying, we distance ourselves from God, we get bitter, and the heart gets hard. We forget about God's sovereignty and timing. Here's even a better question to ask myself in a situation like that, when I'm losing hope. Where have I attached my hope in God to circumstances and the outcomes? Where have I attached my hope in God to the outcomes and circumstances? Because that's what we do. We make a direct connection between the outcomes and God. So if the outcome is bad, it means God is bad, or doesn't care, or doesn't know, or doesn't love me. Where have I done that? We say, I'll have peace when this changes. I'll trust God when He answers my prayer. But biblical hope is not a confidence in a specific result or the outcome. Biblical hope is a confidence in a faithful God. So, what can I do? Because I know that some of you are probably in that situation. Most likely. Maybe, I hope it's not the case, but maybe over a certain time you will be in a situation like that. Maybe you will be losing hope. So there's several things that I want to suggest to you. Well, one thing, I know it's easy to talk about it, but I hope and pray this can help you and that God just would speak this to you if this is what He wants you to hear. One thing you can do is trust God's work, even when it is invisible. Because remember, God still works behind the scenes, even when it seems that He's gone, even when it seems that He forgot about His people. He's still working behind the scenes. During the time when all the godly people in the time of Ahaz, when they were just shocked looking and seeing the chaos that was around them, God was working behind the scenes, raising this godly king through his faithful people. And we talked about it last week. If you remember Joseph from the book of Genesis, his brothers sell him into slavery. He gets into a position, then his master's wife has a crush on him, and then they send him to prison. Then he just gets elevated to the person right below the prison chief or whatever he was called. Then he just gets accused, and then he ends up being the second person in the most powerful country after the Pharaoh in Egypt. And then he sees his brothers who came to Egypt because there was no food in their country. And it was just the right moment for him to have his revenge and get the payback. But instead of paying them back, in Genesis chapter 45, verses 7 and 8, this is what Joseph says. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And you remember, he's talking to the guys, his brothers, who sold him into slavery. They hated him so much that you think your family has issues? Try this. It wasn't a joke. They weren't trying to scare him. They literally sold him into slavery. And he's looking at these people, having all the power in the world to do unimaginable things to them. And he says, now I realize it was God who sent me before you to save you guys. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of the entire palace and the governor of all Egypt. So at this point, Joseph realizes that during all those years, when it seemed like God has just completely forgotten and ignored him, God was working behind the scenes. So trust God's work, even when it is invisible. Second thing, release the outcome. Because God's ways and timing are so much higher and so much better than ours. We just don't get it. We don't see the things that God sees. And Isaiah says, when he's speaking for God, addressing his people, he's saying, my ways and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. They're different and higher than your thoughts. So what I need to do, realizing that his ways are higher, his expectations, his ways that he works and timing is different, so different, but it's so much higher than mine. I need to surrender my expectations. I need to trust God's wisdom over my preference. God sees what I cannot see at all. And then just looking at this passage that we did not read, but when Hezekiah came to power, he reopened the worship. He reopened the temple. He restored the priests and just turned the whole country into a country that pursued God. And so we can kind of imitate what he has done. So what I can do in those situations is kind of reopen and restore the life of worship. Reopen my temple. Like I said, sometimes we distance ourselves. Sometimes we just withdraw ourselves from the church. Sometimes we don't talk to God anymore. I'm worshiping God, but I also have a bunch of idols here that I'm not willing to give up. And in the end, it will drive you crazy. And so what you do need to do in those times is cast those idols away. Take care of the things that distract you from God or compete with God in your heart. Deal with your bad habits that draw you away from God, who loves you so very much. Kind of run an inventory of your life. Because I'm sure you'll find some things that God will say, ooh, what is that? Get that out. And remember that just because we cannot see God working does not mean that He is not. I know that Satan will not succeed if we become the people whose hope is not just fragile, because it is not tied to the circumstances and the outcomes. If we become people like that, Satan is not going to succeed. I know that God wants us to be a church where people are still able to trust God even in the uncertainty, and have faith that is not shaken by the outcomes and circumstances. And the people whose faith is in a faithful God, in faithful God, not in the specific outcomes. I don't know how your situation will turn out. I'm not here to give you false hope. I'm not saying God will come in riding on a horse and fix everything the way that you want. I'm just saying He is bigger and that He deserves our trust. I don't know how your situation will turn out, but I do know that He is faithful. I do know that He is at work, even now. No, I always tell you that we have a prayer team. They're here for you, to pray with you. We're going to sing the worship song that we're going to, the last song that we sing. And maybe just because you do not see them here, you think they're not here, but they moved to the back so that it's easier and less distracting for you. If you want to go and ask them for prayer and pray with them, ask them to pray for you. Because I know we all deal with life. And life has a lot of situations that are not easy to deal with. And it's an incredible blessing to have people in your life who know and who will pray for you. And so, as we sing this song, this next song, I want to encourage you. Share your burdens. Go and pray with people that are willing to pray for you. They're there for you. So use this opportunity if there's something. You don't need to be embarrassed. You don't need to be in front of everybody. You can just quietly go and use that opportunity and use this blessing. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for being our source of hope, even when things and the whole life seems hopeless. God, I pray that you give us the faith and ability to trust in you, even when life just seems to fall apart. Somehow, some way, just give us and teach us to trust in you. Help us to remember that you always love us. Help us to remember that you are a sovereign God whose ways and whose timing are so much different than ours. And that you're a holy and perfect God, regardless of the fact that you sometimes work in ways that are different from our preferences. Remind us of your ultimate expression of your love for us, and that is Jesus, who loved us enough to come and die in our place so that we could be in eternity with you. And we'll pray in His precious name. Amen.